The Marine Conservation Institute is running a campaign to kind of make everybody take a step and think about how important the ocean is to them. We have a website called Map Your Love for the Ocean, where you can put a pin on your favorite place in the ocean. You can put a photo, you can put a story for any place that's a marine location that's special to you. We really encourage folks to go there and talk about why the ocean is important to you. And lucky for me, today I got to invite two friends of mine to talk about some of the current events in marine conservation. I have my friend Angelo Villagomez, who works for the Center at American Progress, and he is an expert on marine conservation generally, with a specific focus on Indigenous rights. And as a member of the Pacific Islands community, is one of our best voices for the Pacific Islands communities here in the U.S., where most of our marine protection actually resides currently. And Andrew Thaler, who went to grad school with me back in the day, go Duke, and is an expert on the deep sea and wrote two amazing blogs recently on the executive orders on deep sea mining that were signed in Sharpie to try and open up U.S. waters to deep sea mining, while at the same time a global moratorium is trying to be pushed forward through the international body. So lots going on. And so I thought I'd let you guys have a second to introduce yourselves, and then we'll chit chat about, oh, I'm sure lots of things, probably baseball and other things too. So Andrew, you're off mute, so you go first.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I am Dr. Andrew Thaler. I am a deep sea ecologist, a conservation technologist, and an ocean educator. And I run a small environmental consulting firm called Blackbeard Biologic that does high seas policy, technology development and integration, and educational programming.
And Angelo?
Hey, what's up? I was just posting it to Facebook and LinkedIn just in case my mom was up and wanted to see me talking to you guys. But my name is Angelo Villagomez from the island of Saipan, which is out in the the northwestern Pacific, sort of between Japan and Australia. Where you are part of a U.S. territory called the Northern Mariana Islands. But I have lived and worked in Washington, D.C. for the last 15 years, currently for the Center for American Progress, where I'm a senior fellow for Indigenous-led conservation, and I lead our oceans work. And I'm also, as a part of that, I'm also the co-lead for the oceans work with the America the Beautiful for All Coalition, which is a national coalition. It's the largest, most diverse coalition of its kind, trying to achieve 30 by 30 in the United States, which is the effort to protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. We've had some political changes recently.
Small ones, though.
That's sort of a nuanced campaign. I just really like to think of it less so than 30 by 30. It's more about protecting more ocean, protecting it faster, and doing it better.
Yeah, and I do want to plug your recent, CAP's recent write-up on applying these lessons locally, right? So as we've kind of alluded to, and if anyone goes to the MP Atlas and looks at the US numbers, pretty much, and I think the number you guys had was 99% of our protection is where 1% of the US population lives. And so what we don't have, and I think it's a problem, right? Like, how can you advance marine conservation when no one sees it? Nobody's seeing it in their own backyard. We don't have meaningful protection where we live. I live right in Massachusetts. We have Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, and it's sort of business as usual. It's largely an educational tool, but in regards to what's protected there, it's continues to show declines when they do their reporting on it because they haven't changed anything. So I don't think people understand, one, the importance of the marine conservation, and then they don't see it, right? So I think that hamstrings us when we try to say we want to protect more ocean, and people don't understand why. So
and sometimes people don't know how much ocean we have. The U.S. exclusive economic zone, and those are the waters that our government controls, are about 11 million square kilometers. I don't know what that is in miles, just because
me either.
like, most of my work has been overseas, and like they just do kilometers there. So I've always just For ocean stuff, I always do
I've
kilometers.
honestly never seen area of anything marine wise ever described in miles, because the most you do is nautical miles, but
Right.
usually we do kilometers.
Well, and everything sounds bigger in kilometers too, so it works
Well,
out better.
hectares. If we wanted to do hectares, then
Yeah,
we're talking, or acres.
Those are just too big.
We do metric Delawares sometimes, and imperial Delaware.
But yeah, you're right. You know, if you people kind of don't realize how big our ocean is, and half of that is in the Pacific Islands. You know, Hawaii, Guam, American Samoa, and if you think of like half of our water is in the Pacific Islands, and then half of our water is around the Caribbean, Alaska, the lower 48. And you mentioned, you know, 99% of the protected areas are in the Pacific, with 1% of the people. And then in the rest of the country, it's 99% of the people, but less than 1% of the marine protected areas. And it's just a total mismatch.
Right.
And like the paper that you brought up, basically what we postulate is that it's because we focus too much on these area targets. And so rather than, you know, protecting biodiversity or working with a community that loves oysters, a lot of the effort of the NGOs and of the government has been for these big empty spaces. And we've done that. We've done an amazing job. You know, if you were to grade the U.S. on how they're managing some of these different habitats on pelagic ecosystems, you know, we probably get a B. I'm not going to give them an A plus because they need management plans and they need staffing and all those sorts of things, and that hasn't always happened very quickly. But for a lot of these nearshore areas around the Gulf of Mexico or the East Coast, there's so much more work to do. And Andrew, my friend here, is from Maryland. And one of the things I didn't understand when I moved to it, I'm in Washington, D.C. I didn't understand when I moved to this part of the country. Yeah, I apologize. I've learned it now, that life is about learning. I didn't understand how much people from Maryland love being from Maryland. It's like right up there with like New Jersey and Texas and California. Like they love being from there, and they love their crabs and their oysters and the Baltimore Orioles. And I just feel like you know, the ocean conservation community hasn't prioritized the Chesapeake Bay as like one of the most important ocean ecosystems in our country. And that's not to say there aren't, you know, literally hundreds of people working on the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah, we've got the Chesapeake Bay National Recreation Area, man.
See, he loves being.
We are working on this. We've got the Mallows Bay Marine National Monument. We've got the Ghost Fleet. Mm-hmm. We are, man, Maryland is on fire.
Aren't there a bunch of shipwrecks out there too that they protect?
Mallows Bay.
That's Mallows Bay. So that's the Ghost Fleet. And that was a fleet of ships that were built to support the war effort in World War I. But they took so long to build the boats that the war was over by the time they started moving. And so they were all abandoned in an area of the Potomac called Mallows Bay. And they just sat there and rotted for 50 years. And now it's this wonderful wildlife refuge with a lot of you know, artificial substrate for stuff to grow on. But like,
somebody put down along the bottom here, do not recommend trying this again. You know, like maybe we shouldn't give people ideas, like build big ships and abandon them. It worked out.
I mean, you know, I think maybe there's some value in turning our warships into artificial reefs.
Fair. Yeah, like the USS, what is it, the USS America or whatever, that got towed out of Philadelphia, I think it was, and is going out to become part of a reef. But that thing, what a hulk. And it's crazy because it's just a big, huge ship, and there's videos of people walking around on it. And it's really crazy to see a completely abandoned ship. Yeah. That's, you know, it's like those old creepy amusement parks when you can go look at them after they've been abandoned and you're like, oh, this is neat. But this kind of, I also want to segue in before we got too far. We can talk about Chesapeake Bay if you want to.
Also, Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge.
Do you want to finish listing all the other ones?
No, I'm good. I'll bring them up as we go.
Okay. Yeah. Organically, that's the way to go. But it is Deep Day, actually, today. And as Deep Day, and because we have Dr. Thaler here, I did want to talk a little bit about the recent executive order, because it's interesting especially in the global picture of like what's happening. Like we finally got a new ISA director who actually wants to do something called conservation and isn't in it just for mining the seafloor. And for those who don't know, the International Seabed Authority is the international body that controls anything that happens on the seabed, not above the seabed, but on the seabed across the world. And so to mine, you have to go through this. And they meet in Jamaica.
They
Is
meet in
that where they
Kingston,
are?
Jamaica.
Yep. Yep. And they have been trying to make rules now for a couple of years for the international community. And so I'll let you take it away, but you can mention what TNC has done. And I'd love to hear what you think could come of it, honestly.
Sure. So the ISA is a UN body. It is created by the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea, and it is tasked with regulating seabed resources in areas beyond national jurisdiction. So all the high seas beyond national boundaries. The US famously is the one major economy in the world that has not ratified the Law of the Sea. So
Mhm.
for the last 30 years, since the articles that created the International Seabed Authority went into force, the US has treated the law of the sea as customary law. So we've agreed to follow and abide by those laws, even though we don't have a negotiating position in the actual treaty and in the ongoing process to develop a deep sea mining code. And that's what the ISA has been negotiating for about the last 10 years, more or less, is the code that will allow companies and nations to access the resources of the high seas and
Has
mine
North
them.
Korea ratified it?
North Korea has not ratified it. Israel has not ratified it. 169 countries have ratified it, and 5 or 6 haven't ratified it. The US has signed it, but not ratified it because we're weird and we have a strange government that no one understands, including American citizens.
We don't like to sign international stuff,
Let's not
honestly.
go. Let's not
Oh,
go
we
down
love
that rabbit
signing it.
hole.
We just hate ratifying it.
Let's not
Yeah.
go down that rabbit hole this quickly.
So there is a mining company called the Metals Company that has been working through the ISA for many years, has partnered with Nauru and has partnered with Kiribati and I believe the Cook Islands and Tonga as well
And
to
those are
develop.
countries, right?
Those are countries.
Yeah,
Those are
in the
member
Pacific.
states. Those are
Yeah.
countries which have ratified the law of the sea. Um, so they've been working with those countries to develop leases in the high seas, do exploration, do prospecting with the ultimate goal of mining those leases. They have this year decided they don't trust the ISA process anymore. They don't think it's moving fast enough. They think it's being stonewalled, and they are going to use their relationship with the United States to exploit this weird loophole where the US is not beholden to the law of the sea if it doesn't want to be, and ask the US to issue mining leases in international waters for their claims. The US has a law called the Deep Seabed Hard Minerals Act that went into force before the ISA was created that set up a structure by which companies could get permits from the United States through NOAA to mine in areas beyond national jurisdiction. There are provisions in the Deep Seabed Hard Minerals Act that say that this act goes out of force once the law of the sea comes into force. So it is a legal gray area, and it is throwing kind of the international regime into chaos because all of these countries have been working really diligently to get a mining code done, and it's going to take a long time because it's a huge, complicated treaty. But sort of throwing a hand grenade into the middle of the deliberations and saying, well, if we don't like it, we're just going to go and work with this one country instead, kind of throws everything into chaos.
I didn't realize all that. That's crazy. So they're not opening up US waters. They're opening up
So they are also, in addition, the executive
there we go.
order
That's what
is
I thought.
the executive order is directing NOAA to develop a permitting structure under the Deep Seabed Hard Minerals Act, and simultaneously directing the Department of the Interior through the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to develop a permitting system for permitting under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act. Now, regardless of what you feel about deep sea mining, that side of it is a legally tenable position. So the U.S. has sovereignty over its own waters and can decide how to permit and exploit the resources of its own waters. Whether or not it should is a different question, but whether or not it can is not in the same kind of nebulous gray area as letting a U.S. company mine international waters in flagrant violation of an international regime.
This is a Canadian company.
It is a Canadian company. They have created an American subsidiary, which they're applying for their permits through. I mean, that's largely nonsense, like whatever. It is a Canadian company that is staffed by people from Canada and the UK and Australia. And I don't know if they have any US employees at all.
I
But
will.
deep sea mining is an international industry. So
I will
all
say
these companies are multinational to some extent.
it's madness too, because it always seems like whatever's happening is at crosshairs with something else this government's trying to do. Because at the same time, they want NOAA to do this permitting process. They're defunding NOAA, and so I don't know who at NOAA is supposed to do this. They're firing everybody there. So it's like, oh, in your free time, could you please start a completely new permitting? So I think they make these big broad things like opening up part of the Pacific Islands Heritage Monument to fishing, and at the same time, they are decreasing the staff at the Western Pacific Regional Fishery Management Council, which would have to write the rules to allow fishing back in. And it's just crazy to me because they keep wanting to do these things and then they just kneecap themselves. I mean, it's a good thing, I suppose, but they keep kneecapping themselves by then underfunding the mechanisms that they would need to do any of these broad basis. So I'll just note that and send that back to you guys because I know you both
Yeah, I
have
mean, my assumption is that is on purpose, right? It's so they're doing two things: is they're slashing the regulations and then they're getting rid of the regulators. So the outcome of that is going to be less regulation. And it's, you brought up the mining, but it's also the fishing. And the fish live in federal waters, which are shared by all Americans. Some of them live in international waters. But like, what's going to happen with our fisheries management? And like, this is like this great unknown. Are they going to kick it to the states? Like, are individual states going to have different catch limits for different species? I mean, this is the chaos that is unleashed when you slash these important federal agencies that are doing the work that individuals can't do for themselves.
Yeah, and I think at last count, NOAA has lost 28% of its staff through the probationary firings and through the Vera retirement program. So NOAA was tremendously understaffed before. It was probably about 50% understaffed even during the Biden administration, and now it's critically understaffed.
Centuries of institutional knowledge walking away. If you were running a restaurant and you lost all of your junior and all of your senior waiters and cooks, the restaurant would go out of business very quickly. And that seems to be the purpose here, is like undermining the existence of government.
Yeah, and for fishing, for a lot of the things that are being regulated, that becomes an immediate crisis. For deep sea mining, this is these industries take a long time to spin up. Even if they got permits tomorrow to start doing their initial exploratory mines, these are not, companies that are going to be profitable next year. They're not going to be profitable probably in the next 5 years. It takes a long time for these to build. They have to survive the next administration too. And so, man, if I were, and I'm a small business owner, so I know a little bit about how this kind of stuff works, but man, if I were a mining company, I would not want to be in a position where those permits could be questioned in any way, because in addition to everything else, and because everything is omni-shambolic, the Chevron defense has been repealed, which means there is now no longer a government doctrine that says the regulators have the final say over the regulations they put. All of these permits are now vulnerable to, continuous lawsuits. And, we talked about the Chevron defense when it was pulled out because it was being used to protect environmental regulations. But the Chevron defense went in originally to protect companies from being sued by environmental organizations. And in the 70s, that was the main way that a lot of companies were hamstrung, not through the actual regulations, but through continuous lawsuits, because NGOs can now sue and say, we don't believe that the regulator had the necessary competence or authority to issue this regulation. So it's going to be the Wild West for a lot of things in U.S. law and policy for probably the next 400 to 400 years.
Yeah, it's the long-term nature of the chaos that's going to be harmful, right? Like these people that NOAA's losing and that are walking away from government right now, they're not going to be sitting there and, when the next administration comes in waiting to be rehired. They're going to find other jobs, and at some point spinning this back up is going to be a real problem. And it's going to it's going to take all of those 3 years for people to realize what they don't have. I know the Republican Congress person, I forget who it was, from Alaska, is already pissed because they can't do any fisheries surveys this year, which they need to know how much they can catch. And they can't even do the basic science that they need to make sure they're not overfishing what they are able to fish right now.
Yeah.
So,
They don't
incredible.
have the personnel, and one of the other knockdown effects that's going to happen, it takes a long time to rebuild things. It's very easy to tear things down. It's very hard to rebuild things. It's also very expensive to rebuild things. And, one of the things we tell students going into marine science is that, jobs in the federal government are great, were great. There's a trade-off with them in that they're very stable, they're very reliable, they're transparent, but your pay is not maximized. Federal employees don't get paid as well as, private scientists working in industries, and in some cases even as academics. But the trade-off is you have a reliable, consistent source of income, and you can plan your career around that. That's gone, and that's going to be gone for at least a generation, which means when we have to actually start hiring people again, we're going to have to start paying them more. Those pay scales are going to massively increase. And so, the knockdown effect of all of this is that actually the federal government is going to get a lot more expensive, and we're all going to have to be paying for that for the next several generations. We have saved no money.
Well, and we're going to spend money on all the
yeah.
litigation too.
Absolutely.
The amount of suing, like these people who've been wrongfully terminated, the amount of lawsuits that this government's going to have on them now for long, we're losing just so much money. And because it's a live stream, and because of course this is when a delivery I've been waiting for weeks has just arrived. I have to run out to my driveway and just give them a quick direction. So I'm going to have you guys.
That's fine.
We can handle it.
A delivery. I assumed she had to take the dog out for a walk because I did hear the dog barking, but I guess the delivery is fine. Do you want to talk about monument rollbacks?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't, but yes, we should.
Yeah, totally. Like, so you saw the news about Pacific Islands heritage.
Yeah. Tragic. And a lot of people I know had worked a long time to get that monument expanded.
Yeah, well, I mean, the expansion is one thing, but just the management of the existing protected area. So a lot of my work has been with Mariana Trench. Like, this stuff does not happen overnight, right? As you were just describing, it takes a long time to build things. Pacific Remote Islands is what it used to be called. It was designated in 2009, expanded in 2014. Like, they're still working on the management plan. Like, this stuff takes years and decades, and it really kind of pulls the rug on the people who work on these things, both in the government, but also just, the communities who care about these places.
Sorry, that was, I ordered a couch, and of
course, nice.
It of course shows up right now, which is what the dogs are barking at, is making sure I know. But I did want to note, and I think Angelo and I talked about this at the time, that of course this administration did not use its actual name. They called it the Pacific Remote Islands, still in their executive order. And I was just like, that wasn't not on purpose, and it's just, they are being pretty thorough in what they can destroy. But I mean, he signed what, 2 bills so far? 3 bills? I mean, he's doing everything through executive orders, which are not law,
And which will be overturned the minute he leaves office.
I mean, executive orders are weak, but they can still cause an awful lot of chaos.
Right. Yeah, because, people act on them. And at this point, a lot of them are getting stopped in the courts because it's just the breadth of them's, amazing. But,
so as far as I know, no lawsuits have been filed yet for Pacific Islands heritage. And I serve on the permanent advisory committee for fisheries in the WCPFC. So I was CC'd on the letter from NOAA Regional in Hawaii, letting all the permit holders know that the area was now open to fishing. So, again, like Andrew said, it doesn't happen overnight. Like, they don't just immediately go there. But probably very soon, if not like tomorrow, fishing will begin. And it's around Johnston, Wake Island, and then the one down south, I think it's Jarvis, will be the ones that'll be open. And just knowing what I know about fishing, Johnston is the one that's closer to Hawaii. It's kind of like between Micronesia and Hawaii. That's the one that the longline fishing vessels want to go to. And so a lot of those boats, I think there's like 150, 160 boats in Hawaii right now. They want to go there. John Lynham from University of Hawaii did a study that released late last year where he looked at fishing effort on the line of all of these large scale MPAs around the world. And he found that, there's double-digit percentages higher of boats right on the border of all these big protected areas.
Yeah.
And the assumption is, fishermen know how to catch fish, right?
Right.
Like they're very good at catching fish. This is what they do for a living, and they know that there's more fish inside the protected area, so they go right to the border. And as the fish, because the only fish who can read is the fish from Finding Nemo. Remember, he had to go to Australia. But yeah, so like the fish come out, and the fishermen know that. And so I imagine there's actually gonna be like a little bit of a gold rush now,
Mm.
because
Charging in.
Can they go
Johnston,
straight in, or do they need rules to do it? Like right
no, you
now,
have to have a permit. You have to have a permit.
and they don't
But
have a way to get a permit yet, or
no, they already have permits.
okay,
So like
so they couldn't be there now.
yeah. I mean, they got to stock up. Maybe when it happened a couple weeks ago, you were midway through a trip, right? And then you got to go back and you got to refuel, and you get all your gear. So it's not like everybody's going to rush into these areas. But fishermen know that there's more fish in this. And so I think that there's going to be a gold rush right away. And marine protected area science tells us that the fish inside of this protected area should be bigger than the other fish. There should be more of them. And so I hope that NOAA is capturing all this data on how much fish they're catching, because the silver lining here is that we could actually use science to prove that this. And Hawaii is a really good test example. If you've ever been to when the boats come in, they come into a port, and then there's an auction house. And as the fish come off, and these are big fish, right?
I've been to this auction house.
Yeah, they're not like this. They're tunas that are as big as I am.
Yeah.
And the fish comes off the boat, and every single fish gets a barcode, right?
Yep.
And so they know the species, they know how big.
And they put the really good fish aside for Japanese markets, because those are the good.
All the best fish.
Yeah.
Well, it's because it's like you see on TV. They auction off each fish one at a time, and then the buyers are there, and the best fish always go to Japan for the highest price, and then probably the second tier stays in Hawaii, and then the worst fish come here to the mainland where we are. But this is
posting our best fish. This is.
But there should be amazing.
Well, we get all the tuna scrape
coming off of these boats, and I hope that you pointed out that a lot of NOAA staff are being let go, but hopefully the data is still being captured, because eventually the politics will flip around. We'll have a Democratic House and Senate again, and we'll have a Democratic president again. Fingers crossed.
I just can't wait to have another election period. That would be nice.
Yeah, that'll be nice. But there should be strong evidence that the fish there are bigger, and that this protected area worked for 10 years.
Cool. Well, I think we've actually gone 30 minutes, just like we knew we would, and we could go another hour for sure. But I'm mindful of the fact Angelo has a conference to go attend. You've joined us from Vancouver. You're not even in DC. So thank you so much. Not even
in America.
I know. He's out of the country, and you guys really jammed this into your schedule, and I can't thank you enough. And personally, myself, it's just really good to talk to you guys and see you both. So thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you guys. If you get a second, go put your favorite places on the marine map. It's pretty cool. I put one. I'm actually headed to Alaska in a couple days, and so I put one up in Icy Strait, which is my favorite place to sail up there. So it's pretty cool campaign, and we really thank you so much. You've been long-term partners and friends, and I appreciate you both. So thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, bye.
And